So we had a great day yesterday exploring Rock Sound, harbor, Rock Sound, caves, ocean holes, and Pink Sand Beach. And today is the day to move. We are trying to make our way north. So we'll try to get to Hatchet today, and hopefully weather cooperates. There are some squalls forecasted by the end of the day, so we hope to get an anchor before squalls hit. Sound.
Like how these lines cross each other.
Yeah, all the time.
Like, there's no... They always get confused. They feel like this could have been done better.
Just going straight line today, all the way.
Straight line day.
Yeah.
We promised straight isolated squalls to 30 knots, which I don't think is happening. I think the front is delayed a little bit more, and we don't... The current, this is from yesterday, current forecasts are showing a squall line to hit us around midnight. And it doesn't look like there's anything leading the front, any patches of squalls. I was thinking about it today, and we seem to always be moving like on the edge, the last day on the edge of these systems. So Hatchet is the best place to be for the next few days. And so if we went to Governor's Harbor, which is a lot closer, we may have to move tomorrow evening, and we may have to do that in the rain. Some of the forecasts actually show a break from like 3 to 7
Oh,
And I almost suggested we go to Governor's,
no,
but I'm like, it looks like we can make Hatchet
we
today.
can make Hatchet. Yeah.
So let's make Hatchet.
So our bilge alarm just went off, and Michael's checking all the bilges, but we think it's a starboard engine bilge. There's some water accumulating there, and it looks like it's accumulating more than it used to. So that's another thing we'll have to look at. Project for the rainy day.
It's that one.
Yeah,
We gotta.
investigate.
Yeah, there's nothing to investigate. We gotta change the water pump seals.
Why is it a water pump issue?
The water pump leaks.
Water pump leaks.
We know that.
How?
The seals of
You
the
do?
raw water pump have been weeping
Mm.
and appear to be getting worse recently.
Okay.
So we have the rebuild kit. So it's possibly accumulated enough water today that the sloshing around in the bilge tripped the bilge alarm for a second, which put us into a panic momentarily because we've never heard that alarm before. Yes, I'm pretty sure it's the bilge alarm because it's the same alarm you get when you test the pumps.
We are going somewhere over there. Do you see the red? I see the red.
Saw there's
Yeah.
a red.
So that's our entrance.
There may or may not be a red mark.
Oh wow. There's a rock over there. See that? See right by the entrance.
Yeah.
You gotta keep to the left.
I gotta get lined up. Well, that wasn't so bad. That was tight. All right, where are we going?
That was interesting. Entrance over there.
Oh, you're gonna record me. That's why you're interested.
Yes.
Not for your own
No.
knowledge. The polar uses angle. It's a polar plot. If you've worked in a polar coordinate system, as opposed to a Cartesian XY. It's not XY linear distance. It's R theta. So your points are plotted based on distance from origin and angle, r theta, polar, as opposed to an XY coordinate system where you would plot this as X y, right? Distance across, distance up. You can plot the same point, but instead of describing it as two straight line distances, you're describing it as one radial distance and an angle from this axis. We're going to make this 0 because boats tend to not sail upwind. So we know on our boat that we can do, let's assume this is 15 because that's what we have more experience with. We know that at about 60 degrees, I'm going to exaggerate this, we can do about, say 5 knots upwind. We don't do so well upwind, but let's assume that we do 5 knots at 60, and we're going to measure it. We're not going to use a true polar system, but we're going to assume. So at 60 degrees off the wind, we can do 5 knots. This is me estimating based on my experience with this boat and how we sail it. And so what you end up with is you basically end up with a chart that looks something like this. Somebody's going to make fun of my polar chart. Kind of looks like a butterfly. Both halves are going to be identical because you should be able to sail the same on port as you do on starboard tack, right? So what you do is you look at, well, upwind, I can, in 15 knots, I can sail upwind at, say, 5 knots. At 90 degrees, I should be able to make, say, 6 knots. Downwind, maybe I can make 9, but the closer I get to more downwind, I can't make as good a progress. And so you end up with a plot that looks something like this. If you had a spinnaker, you might be able to move this. But the point being, distance represents how fast you can go under a wind speed and a point of sail. And so if this is the 15 knot curve, then you can make another one at 10 knots and another one at 5 knots. And you could make another one at 20 knots. For a more complicated polar, you may also plot this with different sail plan, right? So above 15 knots, we're not carrying full sail. So now you get to decide, well, this polar at 20 knots is actually going to look, it should look pretty similar to the one at 15 knots. Once the boat is fully powered, you're going to reduce sail to match the wind speed, and the polar should look pretty similar because you're just reefing existing sails. Now, you're going to get some distortion in your sail shape and loss of efficiency, but you should be pretty good there. So if you collected your own data, you can make an accurate polar, right? So you could look at this and say, well, we have 11.9 knots. Based on my polar, I should be able to sail at 5 knots. The polar would tell you that, based on your history of usage with the boat. And if you're not getting 5 knots, then you're probably doing something wrong. Maybe you have a head current, maybe your sails aren't trimmed. You can take this polar, put it in a sail routing program that has the wind speed fields. And so instead of assuming, okay, we think we can do 6 knots today, what you're going to do is you're going to say, well, here's my course, right? Or here's 2 ways you can do it. Today's easy. We have a straight line course. This is what we're doing today. The wind here is like this at 10 knots, and the wind here is like this at 15 knots, and the wind here is like this at 5 knots. The boat's going to behave differently. So just assuming, well, I need to go 100 miles at 5 knots and I'm going to take 20 hours doesn't take into account that the wind changes and the boat speed changes as a function of the wind. So what you do is you take the polar, you feed it into this model, and you say, well, at A, the wind is on my beam at 10 knots. So I'm going to estimate, I'm going to use this distance here for my boat speed. And then as I move to here and to here, well, I'm going to say, well, now the wind's at 15 knots, but I'm sailing up wind. So I'm going to use this boat speed for here. And so if you do that all along the line, you now have a much more accurate representation of the boat speed based on what the wind and the boat, how they interact. The other way to do it, if you do so-called routing, is you say, I don't know what my course is. I know that I'm going to start at A and I'm going to end at B. And I'm going to use a more sophisticated program. I'm not going to tell it what my course is. I'm going to give the polar and the wind field, and I'm going to let the program calculate a bunch of paths and find the quickest path based on the wind. So if you have a changing wind field over the day and you have a forecast, you can then say, well, the straight line path might take 5 hours, but if you sail on this path, it might take 4 hours. If you let the path be unknown and you look at the polar and the wind field forecasts, you can then try to determine what is the path that gets you the shortest travel time. What's the optimal path? The straight line path isn't always the quickest path for a sailboat.